We humans are capable of so much. We are capable of so many amazing things. But yet, it's 2023. We can fly helicopters on Mars, but yet the minute somebody says, "Hi, I'm trans, I'm non-binary, I'm just different," the world, it loses its mind.
Because of the reactions that we'd had, because of just the sea of hate and the sea of this person is a freak, this person is a fetishist, this person is a danger to women, this person is a danger to this people, that person. There was just unfounded comments, and there was just a wall of them on every single comment section. I had to have a counter-terrorism investigation to see if I was safe. And there was a comment that they totaled up around about 2 million hate comments. You know, we can fly helicopters on Mars, but the minute somebody says, "I'm trans, I just want to go and buy a pint of milk and be myself and not cause anybody any grief," the world literally seems to me to lose its mind.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I remember doing this very, very disturbing story from the UK. At least 30 or so police forces in the UK opted into gender ideology, to the point where a male police officer would be allowed to strip search a woman, even though legally, strip searches cannot be conducted by somebody of the opposite sex. But unfortunately, when it came to gender ideology, police forces considered a man a woman if he identified as one. And we know about the recent Supreme Court ruling that says that is against the law and has always been against the law. According to the Equality Act 2010, a woman is one that is a woman biologically. A piece of paper doesn't turn a man into a woman. So when the law says that a person's strip search must be conducted by somebody of the same sex, that's what it literally means, somebody of the same sex. But unfortunately, even the police force were allowed to ignore that for the longest time. And women had to worry about being strip searched by a man in a wig, claiming to be a woman. So it was at least 34 police forces that allowed trans police officers to strip search women. Now, when women find themselves in trouble with the law, it's not just murderers or women who have committed the most heinous crimes. It could be somebody who got caught up in trafficking, somebody who has been exploited, or it could be somebody who's dependent on drugs. All sorts of people find themselves in trouble with the law. It could be somebody, a woman who's completely innocent and needs time to defend herself and to prove her innocence. But in the meantime, she may be subjected to a strip search. So essentially, this could happen to anybody. Anybody can find themselves in a situation, even though they're completely innocent, where they are in trouble with the law and now have to worry about, can a man subject me to a strip search? Well, according to the Equality Act 2010, absolutely not. That is against the law and has always been against the law. So a lot of these organizations, these sporting bodies, the police force, who went along with gender ideology, they have been breaking the law this whole time. So you would think the police would be quick to backtrack and be quick to update their policies that allowed this to happen in the first place, that allowed this threat to hang over our heads for the longest time. You'd think they'd be quick to backtrack, like the sporting bodies, many of whom are afraid of getting sued, because now there's actually a legitimate threat of them getting sued by women who have been subjected to all sorts of injustices due to their reckless policies. Well, no. The National Police Chiefs Council have shared their intentions recently, and it appears that they are dragging their feet when it comes to updating their policies to make sure that their policies reflect that a woman is a woman who is female biologically, not a man who decides that he wants to identify as a woman. Apparently, they're dragging their feet in acknowledging the true intention of the Equality Act. And one person who's absolutely disgusted by this is J.K. Rowling. And she has said that she will help any woman who seeks legal action against the police. Because generally speaking, it's actually hard to sue the police, at least when it comes to like negligent cases, for example, due to a matter of policy it's very, very difficult to successfully sue them, because we don't want to affect how the police forces run. We don't want to stop police officers being able to do their jobs. So the courts basically said that we can't just allow people to sue them. But when it comes to discrimination, they absolutely can be sued, because all you have to do is prove that you have suffered discrimination under the Equality Act 2010. And we know that the Supreme Court has clarified what a woman is according to that act. So they can absolutely be sued. And it's baffling why they would drag their feet and be reluctant to update their policies and to make it clear in no uncertain terms that male officers cannot strip search women. That's a very reasonable request. J.K. Rowling has vowed to fund any woman who chose to sue the police over being strip searched by a transgender officer. It comes after police chiefs sparked outrage after refusing to immediately ban trans officers from strip searching women, despite the UK's High Court ruling that sex is biological. In a move branded a stunning lack of urgency, forces across the country have said they will not rush to change their policies, even after the Supreme Court's bombshell April 17 judgment clarified that legal sex is based on biology, not gender identity. At least 34 police forces decided that a man can strip search a woman simply based on gender identity. That should never have even been a possibility, a mere possibility in the first place, because it's against the law. Strip searches are supposed to be conducted by people of the same sex, and that means something. But it got to the point where we didn't even acknowledge what that actually meant, which is pretty sickening.
Now, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act PACE that governs searches says they must be carried out where they're more than a basic pat-down in layman's terms by an officer of the same sex. That law dates from 1984. We all understood what same-sex meant in 1984, but the Police Chiefs Council are absolutely desperate to bring this in one shape or form or the other. And in fact, it was following the Home Affairs Select Committee grilling that the then police minister had in January 2024, which also followed the release of the Women's Rights Network report, State-Sanctioned Sexual Assault, on their previous attempt to bring this in, that called a stop to it.
So this was a few months ago. This was a huge debate, a very disturbing debate that we should have never even had in the first place. It should never have been a possibility. But the police were determined to allow men to strip search women. They were determined to implement that policy where they allowed a man to say that he's a woman based on gender identity. And this is why this was labelled state-sanctioned SA by women's rights groups.
I think it's important that everybody understands what a strip search actually involves. The women who are strip searched are often very vulnerable in custody. It's a totally different demographic to male prisoners, for instance. When a strip search involves the removal of your clothing, the exposure of your breasts, your genital area, you may be asked to bend over and expose your vulva area as well. It's very traumatic. It's important these are carried out properly and in accordance with the law. And I think we all remember Child Q, the 15-year-old girl who was exposed to this. How much worse would that have been if the officers doing that were male?
OK, Kathy, I'll come back to you. Peter, there's a lot for you to come back to there. I do just put it to you there. I mean, why on earth should someone who was born a man, who maybe puts a wig on and pays £5 for a gender recognition certificate, be able to intimately search women?
Well, it's not as simple as you express. The gender recognition certificate requires the person to have lived in their acquired or affirmed gender for 2 years, and as you say, get a medical affirmation that they have gender dysphoria.
Not going to be that.
To get that certificate is not easy. It's got quite a few hurdles. But leaving that aside, this proposal is just a proposal. It's not policy. It's just an idea that's been put out, which will be considered by the National Chief Police Council in due course. What's very important is that it states categorically that if a woman objects to being searched by a trans officer, they will have the right to have an officer of their same
Why
sex
should they even have
appointed.
To object, Peter? Why should they even have to object? If they're in a vulnerable situation to begin with, probably the only way your life could get worse at that point is if a bloke in a wig turns up and says that they want to search your orifice.
Yeah.
So that was a few months ago, and this is the reasoning behind these activists and the people within the police who think this is perfectly fine. But thank God the Supreme Court knows what a woman is and acknowledged what a woman is in their judgment. Thank God they made the right decision, because this is the thought process behind people who come up with these policies. And it was actually implemented into the policy of 34 out of 43 police forces in England and Wales. This was the policy. And apparently, they don't want to get rid of this policy. There's no sense of urgency to get rid of such policies, such heinous policies. So Chief Constable Rachel Swan, who leads on diversity for National Police Chiefs Council, told officers the day after the ruling, "We welcome the clarity the decision at the Supreme Court has provided, and will be reviewing our policies and procedures in accordance with the outcome. However, we will not rush our response to the landmark ruling. We will need time to consider the full implications of the court's decision, as will many other public bodies." To think that women have been subjected to this injustice, even though the whole time it was against the law, the whole time it was against the Equality Act 2010, and that 1984 Act as well, that says that you must be strip searched by somebody of the same sex. And it's not like going to the doctor where you can request a female nurse to be present. This is not the same thing. And instead of to be forthcoming with reassurance that you're no longer going to continue to go against the Equality Act, you're no longer going to continue to subject women to injustice, this female officer tells other officers they're going to drag their feet. They don't need to update it. You need to update your policy to fall in line with the law, to avoid legal action, to avoid litigation. J.K. Rowling said on X, "So the police are dragging their heels on stopping males strip searching females, which, as a Supreme Court ruling confirmed, was illegal all along. I'm sure they hope no woman decides to sue. Of course, I'll fund her if she does." J.K. Rowling also donated to the legal funds of the women who sought the clarification from the Supreme Court, the women who set this whole thing in motion, who won and successfully got that clarification, got the courts to acknowledge what a woman is. And they said that most of their donations were accumulation of small donations from the public. Sussex, Merseyside, Northumbria, and Surrey police all confirmed to the Telegraph that transgender officers are still permitted to carry out searches on detainees who share their gender identity, even if they are biologically male and the detainee is female. So basically, men are still allowed to strip search women. You can use whatever fancy language you want to use, or do whatever mental gymnastics you want to do. But this is what it comes down to. Something that should never have been allowed in the first place. Something that these public bodies deserve to face repercussions for. So these policies are under review and there is still no national guidance. The national guidance is the Equality Act 2010. The national guidance is the PACE Guidelines 1984. Why are these organisations acting dumb? I'm so sick of it. You don't need national guidelines on whether men can strip search women. This is basic common sense. But such guidelines exist. For some reason, they want to allow this to continue. It is sick. And I hope women do sue. Please contact J.K. Rowling. The only reason why the Equality Act has now been brought back to what its original purpose was because some brave women decided to seek legal action. They decided to not take this anymore and actually get the courts to acknowledge the truth. When it comes to any suspect who has been subjected to such, unimaginable treatment, she will have legal recourse under the Equality Act 2010. Thankfully, a statute where the true definition of a woman has been acknowledged. And apparently the female officers are absolutely furious about this. Rank and file officers, especially women, are said to be fuming at the leadership's response, One Northumbria officer said, "The messaging we're getting as officers reveals a stunning lack of urgency. There's no rush to review policy." Well, maybe getting sued will give them a sense of urgency. The NPCC stance as, "Keep calm and carry on. We hate this ruling and are looking for options to circumvent it." Of course, the resistance is always going to exist by these woke, deranged people in positions of authority that they have no business being in. We don't even know what a woman is. If you can't even follow the law and you're going to drag your feet and look for loopholes, you're nothing but a disgrace. The Supreme Court ruling has established that a gender recognition certificate doesn't make a man or woman. So you need to follow the PACE guidelines and ensure that people are strip searched by those of the same sex, which actually has meaning in the English language when we say that. It means people of the same biological sex. There's no loophole anymore where you can say, oh, it's gender identity. They love to make things sound complicated so they can drag this out further and they can ignore the law. Swan also said it's important for us to act on the Supreme Court's ruling as quickly as we can, as both our colleagues and the communities we serve are looking for clarity on some very challenging issues, but it will inevitably take time to consider the full implications of the ruling. And perhaps during that time, there's going to be some lawsuits. How about that? Maybe that will get them to pick up the pace a little quicker. I'm absolutely disgusted that a female police officer would be telling her colleagues this, would be saying there's no urgency. We understand that you can't go back and change the past, but at the very least, there should be a great sense of urgency to fall in line with the law by the very organisation that claims to uphold the law. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves and God willing, I will see you in the next video.